Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at an extremely entertaining pick for the Master Premier Cup, and that is a fully maxed out level 50 Shadow Poliwrath. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Smurfy, so many thanks for the battle submission. At level 50, Poliwrath doesn't even get to 3000 CP, meaning that it's at a pretty big stat product disadvantage compared to the other Pokemon in the format. However, Smurfy's not going to let that stop him. He's able to have all positive sets, pairing it up with a Florges and a Shadow Garchomp. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Picking up a terrible lead in the first match, Florges versus the Shadow Magnone. Shadow Poliwrath save switch answered with the Goodra, and oh my goodness, these Dragon Breaths are shredding through the Poliwrath. But this is where Poliwrath can fight back. Super effective Icy Winds and the ever important attack drop. Opponent is going to overfarm and fire off the Thunder Punch just before Poliwrath is able to make the move. Poliwrath commits the first shield of the match and immediately returns fire with the Icy Wind. The Icy Wind shielded up by the opponent. The fast move damage has about equalized thanks to the debuffs. Opponent is going to fire off energy. If we do see a shield by the Poliwrath, and if the opponent shields, honestly, this is going to be really close. It might be a simultaneous KO. So the opponent has a choice to make. They're going to concede switch advantage, going for energy on Magnezone, but that's going to go nowhere for Shadow Garchomp. In the back, opponent has Annihilate, going to bank some energy on the Shadow Garchomp and send in Florges, and this game is just over. Florges honestly can just fire off Disarming Voices at this point, because even a Disarming Voice is going to be doing some very nice damage to the opponents. Florges is going to farm up to the back-to-back. Disarming Voice is going to connect. It's not enough to KO, but that's still very okay for the Florges. Annihilate just going to go for the Night Slash. Florges able to get the farm down. In comes the Magnezone, and for Florges, the name of the game is just burning the switch clock to let Garchomp re-enter the field of play. And Florges is able to make another Disarming Voice, and this, the opponent's just running out of HP. They realize they do not have a win con, and they're just going to let that through. Hopping into the next match, leading Florges versus Goodra. Goodra staying in this lead, so that's pretty nice for the Florges. Florges goes for the Moonblast. It's caught onto Gholdengo, and that is a nice catch by the opponent. Gholdengo now going to be answered with Poliwrath, so instead of bringing in the Garchomp, making the read that the opponent is probably trying to bait out a ground type and saving that Garchomp for whatever the opponent has in the back. We're going to see a shield on the Shadow Ball, and in Overfarm, firing off the Scald, opponent is going to let that through, and Poliwrath is able to pick up the KO. Back in comes Goodra with the Thunder Punch loaded. That does significant damage, but the Poliwrath is able to hang on and make the Icy Wind. The Icy Wind will deal some nice damage to the Goodra. Goodra shields. Honestly, that's a bit of a surprise to me, as Goodra could have survived that. Goodra not going to have a ton of play versus the Florges in the back. It's a Shadow Metagross, and in comes Shadow Garchomp. Shadow Garchomp in a terrific position here, where Garchomp can shield up the Meteor Mash and start spamming out these Sand Tombs. Sand Tomb, not a very high damage move, but this is Shadow versus Shadow. So we see the no shield from the opponent. Garchomp making it to Sand Tomb number 2, winning charge attack priority over the Metagross. Go Garchomp, go. The opponent's at -2, and there's about to be a very disrespectful occurrence. A Florges farming down a Metagross. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Florges absolutely feasting with the leads, now leading against a Chestnut. Opponent save switches into Excadrill. They have never heard of a fire type. And honestly, that's the case with basically any Chestnut team in the Master Premier, is any Chestnut team is basically going to get soloed by a fire type. It's almost always Chestnut double steal. But Excadrill having a terrible day against Poliwrath, as Poliwrath is very comfortably able to win switch. Poliwrath even is able to make an Icy Wind versus the Chestnut. Let's go. That deals some solid damage, and now the opponent, when they fire off this Frenzy Plant, is not going to be nearly as threatening. So they'll fire off the Frenzy Plant. That does nothing to the Florges. Florges now going to go for the knockout with the Disarming Voice. Disarming Voice will be no-shielded. In the back, it's another Metagross, and it's just game over again, as the Garchomp can just continually debuff and debuff and debuff. The Dragon Tails are resisted, but Shadow Garchomp just simply does not care. This is the easiest shield in the history of Go Battle League. Just double shield, keep debuffing, and these Dragon Tails are tearing through the opponent's HP. They're already at half health, purely just off fast moves, and now these fast moves are doing way more damage than they did before. Garchomp actually saying, you know what, it's low enough, I can win the game with Florges. Gonna send in the Florges, make the Disarming Voice, back-to-back games, Florges knocking out Metagrosses, and that will be game over. Unfortunately, the tough leads return in the next match as Florges leads into yet another Magnezone. We see the Poliwrath save switch opponent is going to respond with Gyarados. This is a matchup, unfortunately, where it typically is not going to be favoring Poliwrath. Poliwrath will be able to apply debuffs, but just look at the Icy Wind damage, or I could better say lack thereof. Opponent does make a misplay though. They should have thrown energy before the second Icy Wind was applied. They actually end up shielding, so the opponent has definitely misplayed the mid-game of this match. And Poliwrath was able to force a shield that realistically it should not be able to do. Poliwrath gets to the Icy Wind, but the Dragon Breath damage registers and picks up the KO. Florges is never shielding anything here because, of course, this energy is double debuffed, and Aqua Tail isn't that threatening to begin with, but that's a return from a Gyarados. What the heck? Oh my goodness. To be fair, at -2, it wasn't that threatening, but return Gyarados. Okay, I've officially seen it all. Florges going to fire off the Disarming Voice, pick up the knockout, and it's all up to Shadow Garchomp. In the back, it's Annihilate, and this is very, very winnable for Garchomp. Annihilate is going to be firing off the Night Slash, hoping for the boost, but the boost does not come, and now Shadow Garchomp is about to go on a rampage. Sand Tomb shielded. Shielding the first Sand Tomb is never going to go well for you ever. Garchomp going to expend the first shield, and now the opponent will get that boost, but it's one Night Slash too late for them. Sand Tomb picks up the KO. Back in comes the Magnezone. Magnezone is going to start spamming out these mirror shots. We will see the shield from the Garchomp. Garchomp just has to make it to the Sand Tomb and gets to the Sand Tomb. This will be double super effective damage onto the Magnezone. Sand Tomb gets them low. The switch to the Florges and the snipe with the Disarming Voice. Florges taking out Steel types left and right. And what do you know? That is another win. Hopping to the next match. Oh, this is a huge core breaker. Oh my goodness. Florges versus Chandelure. The save switch to Shadow Poliwrath. But Shadow Ball probably just cleanly one-shots here. Chandelure does not mess around when it comes to damage. The Shadow Ball is going to be shielded. In comes a Florges from the opponent. And things are really not looking great here. The Fire Ghost plus Fairy Core is a very, very strong one in this format. Opponent is going to be able to win charge attack priority with the Florges, and Moonblast is going to knock out the Poliwrath. But, I mean, it's going to be really tough. You really need them to be ABA weak to Shadow Garchomp to have a chance to win this game. The good news is you did bait out the Florges, which is what had to be done. But my goodness, Garchomp is going to have to put in a ton of work in this endgame. Moonblast will pick up the KO. Looking to switch immediately into the Shadow Garchomp as the opponent will send back in that Chandelure. In comes the Chandelure. These Dragon Tails are tearing through the opponent's HP. But in the back, it's a Dragon Breath Gyarados. And unfortunately, it's probably just going to end in a position where Garchomp just gets too low. Garchomp is going to commit the shield as the opponent will fire off the Aqua Tail. Garchomp, these Dragon Tails are adding up quite a lot. Garchomp is going to be firing off the Sand Tomb on charge attack priority. The Sand Tomb is going to be no shielded. Florges can get a farm down, but I don't think Chandelure is in a range where a Moonblast can knock out. In comes Florges. Florges looking for the farm down, gets the farm down, but again, I just don't think this is quite Moonblast range. Florges gonna bait with the Disarming Voice. Does the opponent end up committing the shield? They do. Florges makes it to the Moonblast. Oh boy. Does this KO? Unfortunately, I think the answer is no. It was closer than I thought, but the Chandelure does hang on. Shadow Ball KOs Florges, and unfortunately, that will be game over. Moving to the next match, Florges versus Hisuian Avalog. This is actually a very negative matchup for Florges. Florges loses all even shields. Avalog is able to win charge attack priority if it does come down to that, and Avalog just has a pacing advantage as well. Gonna save the energy, send in the Poliwrath. Opponent staying in. They take so much damage just to get a debuff onto this Poliwrath. Just like that, they've lost half of their Avalog. In comes Annihilate, and Annihilate is now going to be hit with Scald. Scald has been debuffed, so it's gonna do absolutely nothing to that Annihilate. Oh my goodness. Opponent definitely could have farmed down here and probably should have farmed down. they're going to go for the Shadow Ball to pick up the knockout. But farming down, they could have left with energy that could have potentially threatened the Florges, whereas now they have no energy. They're just getting knocked out by a Moonblast, so they're unable to generate an advantage out of the matchup. Back in comes Avalo, but this is a very different ballgame. The Avalo took 6 super effective counters, so in doing so, it lost so much of its available HP. Avalo is going to go for the Icy Wind. It does not KO, and Florges is able to make the Disarming Voice. This will not KO either, but then you can just send in the Shadow Garchomp. It's Goodra in the back, and this is where Sand Tomb can shine. Just debuff the opponent and let these Shadow Dragon Tails absolutely shred the opponent. And oh my goodness, look at the damage. They can try and farm down with the Avalo, but Garchomp flips the script and KOs an Ice type to take the win. Tough lead for Florges as it's matched against an Excadrill. The safe switch to the Shadow Poliwrath. Opponent staying into Drill Run, and that is a lot of valuable HP that they've just lost to do so. Granted, the Drill Run does a ton of damage, but they could have just sent in the Togekiss right away. As Togekiss now is just going to get debuffed, it's going to get very little farm, and this is honestly perfect for the Florges. As you can wait the clock, send in Florges, and baiting out the Togekiss should hopefully free up that Shadow Garchomp in the back. So we're going to see, actually an Overfarm could have gone for a Moonblast right away just to ensure that the Ancient Power didn't land, but saying, you know what, Ancient Power, not a particularly threatening move, so just going to farm up to 100 energy with the Florges and pick up the knockout with the Moonblast, as the opponent will never shield this move. They can send back in that Exca, but if they do, honestly, Moonblast is going to be doing quite a bit of damage here, and that's due to the fact that they took those 5 counters before switching. The Moonblast is shielded. In comes Shadow Garchomp. In the back, it's a Dragonite, and this will be interesting. Garchomp firing off the Sand Tomb. This is going to, unfortunately, not grab a shield from the opponent, but the benefit is it's going to be able to help the Garchomp farm down faster. So Garchomp is going to get the farm down, only having to use 1 shield. The Exca does have a move banked, but now Exca is going to be permanently debuffed for the rest of this match by the Sand Tomb. The Sand Tomb does get shielded. Opponent doesn't overfarm nearly enough, so you can just always let this move go on Garchomp and then just win the game with the Florges. As you can send in the Florges, Florges will be able to shield and make the Disarming Voice, able to outpace the Excadrill and take the win. So Florges is going to get to the Disarming Voice, barely outpacing the Exca, but that's where overfarming for the opponent could have won them the game, but instead they throw too soon and it ends up costing them, as the Florges once again is able to KO a Steel type. Florges, bad news, more Steel types going up against a Metagross. We're going to see the save switch to the Shadow Poliwrath. Opponent responds with a Goodra. We have seen that Shadow Poliwrath does have the potential to flip this in the 2s, so Poliwrath will fire off the Icy Wind, and Goodra will commit an early shield. Goodra overfarming quite a bit. Opponent actually playing to the CMP tie, which Goodra, having a combat power over 1,000 higher than the Poliwrath, is going to be able to win, but they bait with an Aqua Tail for no reason. Poliwrath calls it, they double shield, and the opponent is now in a very difficult spot where the Poliwrath makes it to a 3rd Icy Wind. Opponent, everything has gone wrong. They give up 2 shields for switch, aggressive pivot to that Metagross, and it realistically doesn't matter what they have in the back. Down 2 shields, Shadow Metagross is just going to absolutely cook. Opponent realizes they have made many mistakes, and they will resign the match. Great lead in the next match. Doesn't matter the fast move on the Gyarados. Opponent switches into Shadow Snorlax, and in comes the Shadow Poliwrath. These counters add up, but man, a Body Slam is going to make its presence felt. The Body Slam connects massive damage to the Poliwrath. Poliwrath will go for the Scald. Unfortunately, it looks like Poliwrath does lose the zeros here, because the Scald is not going to be enough with the counters to pick up the KO. So Snorlax is going to be able to make one last charge attack, and that will mean that Poliwrath does have to commit a shield. Poliwrath will get an Icy Wind onto the Gyarados. It is a Dragon Breath Gyarados, so winning switch advantage was very nice, because Dragon Breath Gyarados is very, very bad against Florges. We're going to see Gyarados get a pretty nice farm down. In comes the Florges. In the back, it's going to be Excadrill. And Excadrill, as always, not going to have a fun time going up against the Garchomp. These Shadow Dragon Tails do not look resisted by any means. The Drill Run will connect. Very nice principal charge attack timing. Just going for 1 Sand Tomb and the move. Sorry, 1 Dragon Tail and then the Sand Tomb. Oh my goodness, I am messing up my words today. Okay. Shielding up the Drill Run, but you just can't shield fast moves, and that's the opponent's biggest problem here, is they have no ability to shield the Dragon Tails. And now, oh my goodness, look at that damage. They get fully farmed down, trying to double up. They send in the Gyarados. Yeah, there's just no winning that game, so they're forced to resign the match. Hopping into the final match, amazing lead Florges into Annihilate. Opponent should switch out instantly, and they do. In comes Primarina, and it's a Waterfall Primarina at that. Honestly, not an amazing response in the back to a Waterfall Primarina, so I don't mind staying in here. The Moonblast is thrown. Opponent going for the Disarming Voice instantly, and this just does not threaten Florges. Florges very okay with letting this through. Florges is going to look to farm up, and now go for the knockout with the Disarming Voice. Honestly, the opponent might let this go, considering they've gotten the Florges pretty low, and that's exactly what they're going to do. What's that final Pokemon? It's a Magnezone. This is a really nice pivot to the Poliwrath, so that way you're able to save the Florges for later. Poliwrath calls the bait. It's the Mirror Shot. What a call. In comes the Annihilate. Poliwrath will fire off the Icy Wind. Icy Wind into the Annihilate, does get the shield. Poliwrath aiming for the Scald, but just cannot get there. The nice thing is with the debuff, I mean, a Night Slash is not going to KO. Unfortunately, does get one turn bring in there, but Night Slash is survivable. Opponent realizes this and goes for the Shadow Ball. But now Garchomp is about to absolutely cook, because there's just nothing Magnezone can do to deal any damage to this thing. This Annihilate is running Ice Punch, and that proves to be a very important shield. So if they had Ice Punch, I'm a bit surprised they didn't just Ice Punch the Florges, because Ice Punch would have been enough to KO. Opponent will switch to the Magnezone. Magnezone firing off a Mirror Shot, but Shadow Garchomp does not care about a Mirror Shot. The Mirror Shot does get the debuff. Garchomp going to hit with another Mirror Shot, but again, not going to have to worry about shielding that. This shield is going to be saved for a potential Ice Punch. Garchomp looks like just going to go for a full farm down, because Garchomp will win Charge Attack priority over Annihilate by a massive amount. Garchomp gets the farm down, and now it's Outrage time. Annihilate, turns out they didn't even have the move banked, but even if they did, it's not going to matter. Outrage picks up the KO, and that is a good game. All in all, I'm impressed that a Pokemon that doesn't even get to 3,000 combat power was somehow holding its own against Pokemon that have a way higher stat product, but I guess that goes to show just the power of Icy Wind. The ability to debuff an opponent's attack until they switch out, or just until they get knocked out, is an incredibly powerful one, and it really just goes to show that it can help Pokemon that really have no business competing in a format honestly perform quite decently. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.